In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a title screen and switch between these different worlds. So in the world class, I'm going to right-click, create a new world, call it title screen, and I'm going to choose title screen. To make title screen our opening world or starting world, we're going to right-click it, click new title screen, and when the game loads, this is the first screen that Greenfoot will load up into. So in title screen, we're going to open up its editor, and just like with every other class we've created, we're going to provide a description of this class. So title screen is good enough for now, and just also provide your name and a version or a date. We're going to add some code into the constructor of the title screen world, but just before we do that, I'm going to create a label which is going to hold the title of our game. So label, title label equals new label, and let's call this Hungry Elephant. That's the name of our game. And I'd like that to show in large font right in the middle of our screen. So I need to add a font size. So Hungry Elephant as our string. 100 is a good font size. We can change that later if it's too big or small. Inside the title screen, now that we've created our title label instance, we need to add it to the stage. So add object, title label, and then the position. So I'm right in the middle of the screen, get width divided by 2, get height divided by 2. Okay, that's a little big. The words are running off the screen. So we're going to go back into the title screen world, change the font size to something a little smaller, maybe 60. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now back to the title screen, I'm going to open up the editor, and I'd also like to add some functionality. The functionality will be that when the user hits the space bar, we're going to switch from the title screen to the main game, the other world. So we're going to add an act method for our world. Every world can also act. The act method, you'll recall, is just the method that the Greenfoot framework calls continually. And so this is the main world's act loop. And we're going to write code in here that we want to keep checking. And what we want to check is if the user has typed the space bar. So if you'll recall, you can check the documentation. To check on whether or not the user's typed a key, we can use greenfoot.isKeyDown, and we're going to type the word space here in the parameter. That checks to see if the user's typed space. If they have typed the space bar, pressed on the space bar, that should return true. So we'll put that inside an if statement. So if greenfoot.isKeyDown space, then we're going to switch to the new world. Let me just write a comment here. This is going to start the game if the user presses the space bar. Okay, so inside the code for the if statement that we created here, we want to switch to the other world. So we're going to create a new instance of the my world world. We'll call it my world. Game world equals new my world. That's just creating a new instance of the actual game. And we're going to just simply call the method setWorld to that instance we just created, game world. SetWorld game world. Okay, so cannot find this symbol. We're going to actually need to call this from the Greenfoot class, so greenfoot.setWorldGameWorld. If you want to check on the documentation for how this works, you can right-click the world class, go to the Greenfoot package, check out the Greenfoot class, and scroll down. There's a method here called setWorld, and you need to supply an argument that is of the world type. Okay, let's run this. You can't see it, but if I hit the spacebar now, we can switch to the other world, and then we can begin playing the game. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to add objects from the visual interface right onto the stage. Now, when you do that normally, if you right-click on the class, click New Elephant in this case, and reset the game, the elephant disappears. To make it stay there, you can right-click on the stage, choose Save the World, and what actually happens is inside the world class, it's going to create a prepare method for you, and inside the prepare method, it creates the instance of the class that you want to create and puts it on the screen. The prepare method is placed inside the constructor of the world, and so that gets called, and the elephant in this case gets placed onto the world. You'll have to play with it to make sure that the object that you want to put on the world is actually in the location that you want it. I'm going to change the title to be something a little shorter. Instead of Hungry Elephant, I'm going to write The Elephant. I mean, it's up to you to change and choose an appropriate title for your game. I'm also going to play with the numbers here so that we can get the title to appear at a location that I want it to appear. I also want to add instructions onto the title screen, so I'm going to move the title out of the way a little bit. And again, you can play with this. You can create a label from the visual interface by right-clicking it, choosing a new label, and supplying some information here. So maybe to instruct the user to press space to advance to the next screen, press space to start could be the string inside the label, and then choose a font size, and you can drop it onto the stage. You can also play with this in code to make sure it works and looks the way you want it to. In this tutorial, I'd like to show you how you can include Unicode characters in your code. So in your code, when we put the instructions to move our elephant, we have a less than sign and 2 dash signs. We can do better than this by choosing a Unicode character. If you go and Google Unicode, you can see that there are many symbols that you can use inside your string literals. Now if we scroll up, I'd like to choose an arrow like this one here, U2190, to include inside our game. So inside the string, we can just type in \U2190, and for the right arrow, it was \U2192, and when we run it, we can see these arrows appear. To make our game more fun and challenging, I'm going to include code to make our game more difficult over time. Here's what our elephant game title screen looks like right now. We've added a background image and moved the labels and repositioned text. Inside our Apple class, I'm going to include a new instance variable called speed, and I make it equal to 1. And where we have our apple falling, before it was +2, I'm going to add the plus speed variable instead. Down below, I'm going to create a new method called setSpeed and include a parameter int speed, SPD. And in here, we're going to set the speed of our falling apple. We're going to write the code for this a little bit later on. Let's go back to the world class and add some more code here. In our world class, I'm going to add a new instance variable to keep track of the level of our game. So int level equals 1, so level 1 to start. So down below inside the increase score method, I'm going to change the level depending on the number of apples eaten. So if our score gets to a certain number, maybe 10, I'd like to increase the level. Maybe 10 is actually a little bit too much. Let's just change that to 5, score mod 5. If after every 5 score, so if score mod 5 equals 0, I'm going to increase the level by 1. So level plus equals 1. Okay, so that should increase level every time we've eaten 5 apples. Down below, whenever we spawn an apple, we're going to now need to also call the set speed of our apple. So apple dot set speed, the method that we started writing before, set speed to be the level of our game. Let's compile that. That's not going to run because we haven't finished the code. So going back to the Apple class, open the editor. Inside the set speed method, I'm going to change it so that speed is equal to SPD. So now when we start the game, I'm going to run it, hit the spacebar, begin the game, and we're going to see after we eat the first apple, the apple's coming down slow. And over time, if we've gotten to 4 apples, still slow, then 5. And after we've eaten the 5th apple, we'll see the next one coming down a little faster. And we're going to be at this speed until we get to 10. And you'll see that after we've eaten our 10th apple, the apple's coming down even faster. And that way the game's getting more difficult over time. In this tutorial, I'd like to show you how to export a file so that a friend can easily play your game. So in the Greenfoot editor, you can click on the share button in the top right part of the screen, and you can choose a file name for your game. So this is elephant.jar, that's fine. You can also choose to hide the controls. You can play with these settings. You can also opt to choose to export your file as something that will be played on the Greenfoot gallery site. So on the website, you just have to enter some of these fields and send it there. But for now, we're going to create a jar file, hit the export button in the bottom left of the screen, and a file should be saved in your folder. Going back to the folder where our Greenfoot project exists, scrolling down, you'll see that the elephant.jar file has been created. And what we can do is just double click it or open it, and the game will play on its own here. So it's going to take a moment to load up. And when it's finished loading, you can click on the Run button in the bottom left part of the window, and the game will execute and run as expected.